Hello and welcome to the Sales Experts channel. I'm Liz Heiman, and today we're going to talk about how to improve your B2B sales and business growth with on-target sales positioning. I am so pleased that you're here, and I'm really looking forward to our time together. Before we start, I just want to make sure you know a little bit about the Sales Experts channel and some of the amazing sales experts that you'll find in this group. Some of the best in the world join us here on this group. And there are some that are doing regular TV shows, regular shows that you can join. One of them who I want to specifically point out to you today is a woman named Lisa Dennis. And she's talking about value proposition. And we're going to talk a little bit about value proposition today, but Lisa is the queen of value proposition. Carol Mahoney has a show. She talks about problems that salespeople face and how to deal with them. And you might want to join Bryn Tillman in Selling Links, that's actually not what it's called. But anyways, Bryn Tillman has a great show, and she talks about social selling. I think that's what it's called, social selling links. So please check out some of the other experts, and I hope you enjoy them. I want to introduce myself. So my name is Liz Heiman, and I believe in making sales simple and predictable and understandable. And I don't think that sales should be a mystery, or that it should feel like you're herding cats, or that it's chaos or crazy. I want you to feel like sales is something that you can manage and understand and make work for you so that you can make your company grow. So that's my mission today. And what I ask of you is this. I'm glad you're here with me, and I really want to hear from you. So if you have questions, please post them in the question section, and I would be happy to answer them. And if you want to practice posting in the question section, go ahead and say hello. Tell me who you are, where you're from, and I'd be happy to see that. It makes me excited to know that you're here. But this is proactive and interactive. So if you have questions, tell me, and if I can stop, I'll stop, and if not, I'll answer it at the end of the section. Or you can go to the attachments, and you can find several ways to communicate with me after the show. So you can link in with me. You can find the link right there. You can schedule a 30-minute session with me. There are lots of things you can do, but I want you to get your questions answered. That's the most important thing. So does this feel like your world, like you're actually trying to talk to people and you're completely missing the mark? You're like, I'm sending out my messaging. I think I'm sending the right message to the right people, but it's just they're not listening. Why aren't they listening to me? And I want to talk a lot about, why would that happen and what do we do about it? And the next thing that I want you to think about, whoops, I'm trying to do the wrong thing here, sorry. Sorry about that. The next thing I want you to think about is how often do you send out your messaging into the world and you're hearing back from the wrong people? And I made this really obviously a clown. We don't want to work with clowns unless our business is about working with clowns, right? So how is it that we're sending this messaging out into the world where we think we're reaching out to the right people with the right message, and we're missing the mark, but we're reaching the wrong people? So the people we want to hear us aren't hearing us, and the people we know aren't going to buy from us, they aren't, they're not our ideal customer. They're the ones that are hearing us. So the question becomes, how do we make sure we're hitting the mark? How do we hit that target and reach the customer we want to reach in the way that we want to reach them, when we want to reach them, so that they are communicating with us about the product that we have and the solution, more importantly, the solution that we have for the problem that they have, and that they see us as a viable, valuable possibility in their world. That's what we really want. So what we're going to talk about is how do we increase sales and profitability through positioning. So let's start by, we're going to talk about 3 different kinds of positioning. We're going to talk about 3 kinds. One is we're going to talk about market positioning. And that's easy. We understand that. And we'll talk more about it. The second thing we're going to talk about is ideal customer, which you may not think about as positioning, but if you don't understand who your ideal customer is, you can't be positioned with them. So we want to make sure we understand who our ideal customer is, and then we want to talk about value proposition. And that is, what's the right message for my customer to get their attention, for my ideal customer. So let's talk a little bit. I just showed you a slide. I want to take you to this very specific place. I want you, in your mind, close your eyes and imagine you're buying tennis shoes, or you're buying athletic shoes, right? And you are now standing here looking at a wall of options. All of these things. There's tennis shoes and running shoes and court shoes and walking shoes, and there's all kinds of shoes. And you have to make a decision. So there's going to be a couple of things that impact the decision that you make. One is going to be if I want a tennis shoe or if I want a running shoe, right? One might be, what does it look like? What's the color? What's the style? Might impact, how it feels might be a part of the decision. But when you're looking it up on the shelf, aside from the color and the purpose, you're going to think about the brands. And I want to get your attention here for a second as we think about brand, because brand is really, really important. So let's stick with this tennis shoe story, or this running shoe or athletic shoe story. These companies have worked really, really hard to develop a brand. And that brand is not just their logo and their color, and it's their story. It's how you perceive them. So let's say, for instance, you want to buy a pair of running shoes. You're a serious runner. What are you going to buy? How many of you said New Balance? And if you said New Balance, that's because New Balance spent a ton of money and effort creating a place in the market space for themselves to be perceived as the best running shoe. Now, there's other great running shoes. Maybe you like Asics, maybe you like Nikes, but what New Balance wants you to think is, if you want to really take good care of your feet and you're a serious runner, you need New Balance, right? That's what positioning is about. You have all of these choices, all of these things you can choose from. You're looking around. How are they all positioned so that they get your attention? And the right brand gets your attention at the right time. That's what positioning in the marketplace is about. So let's talk a little bit more about how we want to be positioned. And I use the word vis-a-vis here, but in relation to. So how do you want to be positioned in relationship to your competition? I know, don't tell me you have no competition. Everyone has competition. So let's just say for a minute that your competition is do nothing. It's still competition. So how am I perceived by my customer in comparison to my competition? Well, if my competition is do nothing, then I may be perceived as too much work, too much money, too much hassle, and your customer may feel like they would rather just do nothing than use your solution. But if you know that your biggest competitors do nothing, then what you want to do is make sure that you're perceived as simple and inexpensive and easy and worth the investment, right? If your competition is a competitor who does something very similar to you, then you want to make sure that you are positioned vis-a-vis your competition in a very specific way so that the right customers find you. So the other thing we want to think about is, how are we positioned in relationship to our customer's problem? Do they see me as a SaaS solution, or do they see me as a partner in solving their problem? How do they perceive what it is that I offer? So for instance, I use a program called Zoho. You guys may be familiar with it. When I talk about Zoho, a lot of my friends say, oh, Zoho's a CRM. And I'm like, yeah, Zoho is a CRM. It also happens to be a place to keep your books, and a place for your marketing, and a place for your website, and a whole bunch of other things. And they're like, oh, I had no idea. Well, that's because Zoho has not done a good job of positioning themselves as a solution to all of these problems. They've just positioned themselves as a solution to a need for a CRM, right? So customer perception, how does the customer perceive them? The customer perceives them as a CRM. If they want to be perceived as, and they also may perceive them as low budget, or they may perceive them as not as good as Microsoft, or not as good as something else. So if I'm looking at my problem, I want to think about what is the best solution for the problem that I have. And so what you need to be doing is understanding your customer's problem and how to help them understand that you solve that problem, or that set of problems. So if you do more than just have a CRM, then you want to position yourself to solve more problems than just the CRM problem. And then the next thing we have is this customer perception thing. How do they perceive you? And we just talked about, do they perceive you as low end? Do they perceive you as expensive? Do they perceive you as not trustworthy? Well, how do they perceive you? And then the last thing is your product. How are you positioned in relation to the actual product that you have? Do people understand the product, the thing you solve, the way you solve it? And are you positioned for them to understand it, or do you need to do some work on your brand and your story so that they understand? And I never like to focus on product. Notice it's last. So let's talk about positioning a little bit more. So when we think about positioning, if you think about Nike, or you think about any of the big brands that you have, we have certain perceptions about who Apple is, and who Microsoft is, and who Coca-Cola is. We have immediately, when somebody says those words, we have a perception, and we think about them. Are they cutting edge? Are they simple, sustainable, complete, luxury, quick, do it yourself? The point here is that as we are thinking about the product, if we're thinking about the brand rather, we immediately put some words, some ideology around that, right? And so if you are trying to create your brand, then you want to think about, again, we're going to talk about who your ideal customer is, but if you have an ideal customer, what matters to them? Is your customer younger, and is your customer more interested in social good? And if you have a younger customer and social good is really important to them, then you need to make sure that your brand involves and encompasses that social good. Forgive me. In addition to solving the problem, right? So, and there are some people, if your ideal customer wants a simple solution, then tell the story that this is simple. This is so simple. You set Alexa on the table, you turn it on, and Alexa knows what to do. It's simple, right? Which is really different than, if you get a really high-end security system that may be very complex and cutting edge and super, and you have to learn how to use all the pieces and make everything work, and it's not simple. So really think about who's your customer, what problem do they have, and how do you solve it, and how do they want to see you as the way you solve it. So if there's a whole slew of competition like there is with athletic shoes, you want to be branded such that they understand how you solve the problem for them. Do you do it environmentally? Do you do it quickly? Do you do it easily? Do you give them the most high-tech solution? Who are you in the marketplace compared to everybody else? So the next thing I want to talk about is your ideal customer, because you cannot figure out how to position yourself in the marketplace if you don't understand who your ideal customer is. And I do not know why this slide did this goofy thing, but we'll just pretend it actually says ideal customer. So what makes your ideal customer ideal? And I'm going to leave this slide up for a minute, and then I want to just kind of chat with you about it. It might be that your ideal customer has shorter sales cycles. Might be that they have higher revenue, they're more profitable, they're easier to work with. So let's just think for a minute about your ideal customer. So if you sat down today and you made a list of all of your customers, and you figured out how much they spend with you, you thought about how much could they actually be spending with you compared to what they spend with you, You thought about how hard they are to work with, how profitable they are, how well they represent you in the marketplace. When they say, hey, we use this product, or does that make you proud? Or are you like, oh, please don't tell anybody that you use my product, right? So think about, in your mind, what would be the perfect customer? And I'm serious, go for it. They're easy to sell to. They keep buying more and more. They stay with us for a long time. They're easy to work with. They're fun. They're open-minded. They're solution-oriented. I don't know. Those are things I think about. Maybe they like to make quick decisions and, buy the same thing over and over again. And that makes them the ideal customer. Whatever it is, look through that list and think about each of the customers that give you a good feeling. So you look at that list and you go, oh, this is a good customer. Why is that a good customer? Oh, this is a good customer. Why is that a good customer? Go through your list and really think about what makes this a good customer. And pretty soon you'll come up with criteria for who your ideal customer is. But what we know in the long run is that, and I want to go back to this slide because it's really, really, really important. And that is not only what makes your customer ideal, but if we sell to our ideal customer, and I'm going to say this again in a few minutes, I'm sure, but what's really great about selling to our ideal customer is that our sales cycles tend to be shorter. Our close rates tend to be higher. The revenue per sale tends to be higher. The profitability tends to be higher. The longevity of the relationship tends to be higher. The ability to grow the relationship tends to be better. They're easier to work with. Everything about it makes them better. And so when you think about how am I going to spend my focus, I want to focus on the customers that end up being all of those things rather than customers that are hard to sell to, are never happy, end up not being profitable. Nobody wants to work with them. They don't buy from us again. We have to find a new customer to replace them, right? Blah. None of us want that. What we really want is customers who meet this criteria. So if we understand who our ideal customer is, then we can start to really think about how do we find them? How do we target them? How do we message to them? How do we position ourselves so that they recognize us? So I want to talk about two things here. I want to talk about demographics and psychographics. And I am pretty sure you know what demographics are. Demographics, they're the things that you can measure, right? And so you see all these calculations over here. That's my representation of measurable. I have to be honest. When there's a square root sign, I get really nervous, but don't tell anybody. But anyway, demographics are things like how many people are in the company? How much revenue do they have? How many computers do they have? Where geographically are they? What industry are they in? These are all things that are really easy to understand, really easy to find out. They're calculatable, they're mappable, right? These are the big things that we use when we create who is our target market. But I want to talk a little bit, those I think you're probably pretty comfortable with, and I bet most of you could tell me right off the top of your head what the target market criteria, what criteria is for your target market, right? They're in this industry, they're this size to this size, they have this many employees, they have this much revenue, they, whatever it is, you know that right off the top of your head. I want you to start thinking about the psychographics. And psychographics are those things that are not measurable. They're not so easy to understand and to find, but those are the things that differentiate between good customers and ideal customers, or bad customers and ideal customers, right? So the more you can understand the psychographics of a good customer, the more likely you are to be able to target them. So psychographics are things like their values. Some customers put their values right out there, or some companies put their values right out there, you can see them. It might be things like how easy are they to work with? How open are they about what their problems are and what solutions they need? Do they pay their bills on time? Do they have a good reputation around the community? Do they keep employees and vendors for a long time, or do they tend to always be blaming them for everything that goes wrong and firing people and having a lot of turnover and talking bad about their old vendors? Like, these are the kinds of things that impact relationships and cost money and make them not a good fit. So think about, it's not just the technology and the number of people and the industry, but really, what are their values? What makes them the perfect fit with your company's culture and way of doing things? And let's focus on finding those customers who are going to fit best with your company culture and the way you do things and the product that you have. Don't sell people a product they're not going to be happy with. You're not going to end up happy. It's called lose-lose. Everybody talks about win-win, but they don't talk about lose-lose. Don't get into a lose-win solution, because you will end up in lose-lose and everybody will be unhappy. So find your ideal customer and sell to them, focus on them. So if we understand who that is, again, we can position ourselves in the marketplace with them. They can then begin to hear us. Remember the picture in the beginning of the woman who was like, I don't want to hear this, la, 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 right? That's because it wasn't the right message for her. And if she's your ideal customer, your message needs to be the right message for her, not that clown that you really don't want to be talking to. They just waste your time. They don't buy anything. If they do, they don't spend a lot of money. They nickel and dime you. We don't want those. We want the people who go, this is perfect. What do I have to do to get it, right? So if we understand who are, I'm going to just quickly show you some demographics and psychographics so you can see it and kind of hold it in your head. So demographics are things like industry, geography, revenue, size, technology. Psychographics are relationship, ideology, turnover, integrity, and openness. And what I forgot to do was post this presentation. So if you would like a copy of it, then go ahead and click on the attachments on the LinkedIn and say, hey, Liz, I'd like a copy of the presentation, and I'll send it to you. Okay, so I want to go now to value proposition, because if we know how we want to be positioned in the marketplace and we understand who our ideal customer is, then we need to craft the messaging that positions us the way we want to be positioned with our ideal customer. So when I talk about a value proposition, and I want you to look at this slide really carefully, because not everybody talks about value proposition this way. So, and if you want more of this, again, Lisa Dennis is brilliant. So value proposition, it's my customers' problems in their words, right? My customer's problem in their words. How do they define and describe and talk about their problem? How I solve that problem, not what my product is, but how do I solve the problem? And then the third thing is why my solution is best for my ideal customer. Your solution is not best for everybody, right? Everybody who rides a motorcycle does not want a Honda. If I ride a Harley, you're not going to be able to sell me a Honda because I'm not a Honda person, right? Your solution, if you sell Hondas, is not ideal for somebody who rides a Harley. So think about why my solution is best for my ideal customer, who we just spent all this time trying to understand. So let's talk about my customer's problem, the way they do, the way they talk about, the words that they use. Things that they use, things they might say are, it's stifling my growth if they're the CEO. If they are the person who uses it every day, they might just say, this is broken, it doesn't work. If they're a manager, they might say, this is resource intensive. It is just not a good solution for us. How do they talk about it? So if you come in and you talk in words that don't resonate with them and the way they think about their problem, they're not going to respond. And if you start talking about your product and all the little details of your product, they're not going to hear you because they don't care about your product. And I want to look at you when I say this because I want to be really clear. Your customers don't care about your product. They don't care. They care about their problem. So I was working with a really high-end company for a while, and I was talking to one of the sales reps, and I said, hey, so what problem is this customer trying to solve? And his answer to me was, oh, they need software that does this. I'm like, no, they don't need software. They don't care about software. Software is how they have to solve this problem. But they have a problem if they need solved. Something isn't working. Something's going too slowly. They're not getting the right data. Something is wrong that needs to be fixed. And the software is the thing they have to use to fix it. They don't care about software. They're not buying software. Software is secondary. What's most important is they're buying a solution to the problem. So let's go back and think a little bit about, so the first thing is remembering, how do they define their problem? If they say to you, I'm buying software to solve this problem, then you aren't talking to them about their problem. And they're pretty far down their buying process because they've already gotten to the point of what solution I need. So how does my customer describe their problem in their words? And the second is, what is my solution? How do I solve it? Not what is my product, but how do I solve it? I solve it by helping you. So this is what I do. So if you said to me, Liz, what do you do? How do you help people? I say, well, my customers say that their world is chaotic. Sales is chaos. It's unpredictable. It's unmanageable. And they're really frustrated, and it's preventing them from growing. And so how do I help them? I help them put an operating system around their sales so that they can be in control of what's going on. Oh, so that's my solution. Notice I didn't say any details about how I do it. I just said I help them put an operating system around their sales, right? That's my solution. And the next thing is, why is your solution best? Well, when I talk to my customers, and I tell them why my solution is best, what I tell them is because I work with you one-on-one and build each system that you are going to need in order to run your sales operations, right? So if you need strategy, we'll sit down together and we'll build your strategy. If you need sales process, we'll sit together and we'll build your sales process. That's what I do and how I do it. And the reason it's best for my ideal customer is a company that is run by the owner or a CEO that's very close to the owner. It's relatively small, less than $100 million, and the owner is still very involved in the sales process. They're trying desperately to grow, and they need to get some control over what's going on. So they're either a startup that's having pressure to sell, and they have no system. They need to build a system that will help them sell, or they're a company that's been around 15 to 30 years, and suddenly what they're doing isn't working, and now they need somebody to come in and help them fix their sales. So if that's who my ideal customer is, then what I do is I help them build an operating system to get control, right? So does that make sense? I hope that we're not talking about, I still didn't tell you about my product very much. You still really know very little about my product. But you know how I solve the problem and why I'm best for my ideal customer, because I work directly with the leadership, right? All right, so let's wrap this up. Why? Why am I going to do this work? Well, here's the result of doing this work. And I told you I was going to say this again. So the result is you increase sales with the right positioning. You close more deals by focusing on your ideal customer. You get attention with a compelling value proposition. You move marketing and sales alignment. You improve marketing and sales alignment, so we're all using the same language. But truly, and most importantly, shorter sales cycles, higher revenue per close, a higher close ratio, repeat business, less expensive to work with, people like working with them, more profitable. All of those things become true when you position yourselves with the right customer and use the language that helps them understand why you're the best solution for them. That's why we do this. And if you need help doing this, I encourage you to reach out to me. Like I said, there's some really easy ways to do it. Here's my phone number. I'll leave it up for a few minutes so you can give me a call if you want to. You can probably the best way is to just click on the attachments and go find me on LinkedIn and say, hey, I want a copy of this presentation, or hey, I'd like to chat. There's also a link so you can set up a 30-minute call with me, and I'll answer any of your questions. It truly is just a let me help you get started session. So if you'd like help with your positioning or building a sales operating system or sales strategies, set up some time with me. I would love to spend 30 minutes with you, helping you get started thinking about how to solve these problems. There's also a link to my sales operating system guide. So if you'd like to know what a sales operating system is, you can go ahead and click that link and fill in the form, and you can get your very own sales operating system guide. There's a link to my website. So there's lots of ways to reach me, and I encourage you to reach out. I'm going to just sit here for a few minutes and be available to answer your questions. So if you have questions, please, this is a great time. I haven't seen any so far, but that doesn't mean that there weren't any. So while I'm waiting for you to ask questions, and I'm going to give you a couple minutes, one of the questions that gets asked to me all the time is, well, I have a value proposition. Why isn't it working? And again, my friend Lisa Dennis, who I think you should, check out what she says about value proposition, is she says it's because your value proposition is inside out. It starts with your product. And another person who talks about this that you might want to, gosh, I just forgot his name. His book is called Starting with Why, and just forgot his name. I don't know why, but anyway, it's another great book. But the idea is that we're inside out. We're starting with ourselves and our product. And as I said before, nobody cares about us or our product. They care about themselves and their problem, and they want it solved. And what I often say to my customers when they talk about, well, what kind of language should I use, or what should my sign say at my booth at the trade show, which it's been a while for many of us. And my answer is this. If you ask most people who are in marketing, they'll say, oh, what you want them to do is say, tell me more. You know what? I do not want you to say, tell me more. I want you to look at me and go, oh, can you do that for me? Because if you can do that for me, we have a conversation, right? If the moment you can get somebody to say, can you do that for me? You're halfway there, right? Because you've hit a nerve. You are talking to them about the problem that they don't know how to solve. And that's where we want to be with our value proposition, with our positioning, with our ideal customer. When we're talking to our ideal customer about our solution, they are going to look at us and say, oh, can you do that for me? But if I start by talking about my product, they're like, yeah. There's lots of products. There's lots of companies that do stuff like that. Yeah. Whatever. Let me talk to somebody else. But when you talk to them about their problem in their language, the way they talk about it and think about it and feel about it, you will get a reaction. So I haven't gotten any questions, so I'm going to go ahead and sign off. But please reach out to me and let's have a conversation. You guys have a great day.